three times in one season, that's no longer a coincidence. That's no longer a bad matchup. That's no longer just a difficult opponent. After defeating Coco Gauff again in the Italian Open final, Elina Svitolina has officially become one of the biggest psychological problems in women's tennis. And honestly, the scariest part for the rest of the WTA Tour is this. She looks completely unstoppable on clay right now, because this wasn't just another emotional victory. This was a statement, a brutal, exhausting, nearly 3-hour reminder that Svitolina suddenly knows exactly how to break Coco Gauff mentally, tactically, and emotionally when the pressure gets highest. And now the entire conversation before Roland Garros has changed completely. At the beginning of the season, many fans believed 2026 would become another major breakthrough year for Gauff. She already had the athleticism, the confidence, the Grand Slam experience, and after winning Roland Garros last year, expectations became massive entering this clay season. But every championship run eventually runs into one dangerous problem. The opponent who understands your game too well. For Gauff, that opponent is becoming Elina Svitolina, because this Rome final felt painfully familiar. The frustration, the momentum swings, the emotional pressure, the missed opportunities, and eventually the same ending. Svitolina celebrating while Gauff tried to process another crushing defeat. Now let's be fair for a second, because this match was absolutely high-level tennis. Gauff fought incredibly hard. In many moments, it honestly looked like she might finally flip the rivalry emotionally, especially during that second set. After losing the opener 6-4, Gauff refused to collapse mentally. That matters because earlier this year at the Australian Open, she looked emotionally overwhelmed almost immediately against Svitolina. This time was different. She battled. She adjusted tactically. She started using more variety with the drop shots and aggressive forehands. At the net, she looked more confident. During longer rallies, she finally began pushing Svitolina backward occasionally instead of constantly reacting defensively. That second set tiebreak felt huge psychologically, because for the first time in this rivalry all season, it seemed like Gauff might finally be escaping Svitolina's grip emotionally. Then the third set started, and everything changed again. That's what makes Svitolina so dangerous right now. She never panics. Even after losing the second set, even after Gauff built momentum emotionally, Svitolina walked into the decider looking calmer, sharper, and tactically clearer. Immediately she attacked. Immediately she pressured Gauff's weaker forehand side. Immediately she forced uncomfortable movement and rushed decision-making. And suddenly Gauff's frustration returned. That sequence early in the third set told the entire story of this rivalry. Svitolina grabbed control fast, built a 5-2 lead, and never allowed the momentum to swing back again. Championship composure. That's what separates elite veterans from everyone else in moments like this. And honestly, Svitolina's Rome run may be one of the most impressive tournaments we've seen on the WTA Tour in years. Think about who she defeated. Elena Rybakina, Iga Swiatek, and now Coco Gauff, the number 2, number 3, and number 4 players in the world rankings. On clay, that's insane. You do not accidentally produce a run like that. That requires tactical brilliance, physical endurance, emotional toughness, and absolute belief. And suddenly, Svitolina looks like one of the most dangerous players heading into Roland Garros. Honestly, maybe the most dangerous. Because what makes this version of Svitolina terrifying is not overwhelming power. It's the discipline, the patience, the emotional control. Against Gauff, she constantly forced one extra shot, one extra decision, one extra uncomfortable moment. That slowly creates pressure, and pressured players eventually force mistakes. We saw it again Saturday night. Gauff's forehand completely betrayed her during key moments. Several returns sailed long early in the third set. Breakpoint opportunities disappeared because of rushed shot selection. Even some drop shots failed badly under pressure. Meanwhile, Svitolina stayed stable. That contrast decided the final. And here's the statistic that should seriously scare the rest of the tour. Svitolina is now 8-0 in clay court finals during her career. 8 finals, 8 titles. That's ridiculous consistency. Some players rise emotionally on clay because the slower surface rewards tactical patience and physical resilience. Svitolina clearly belongs in that category. The longer rallies become, the calmer she seems. And now she owns 3 Italian Open titles. 3. That puts her into legendary territory in Rome, especially considering the era she's competing in. Now let's talk about Gauff, because despite the loss, this final revealed important things about her too. First, her resilience remains elite. Many players mentally collapse after repeated defeats against the same opponent, especially after losing to Svitolina already at the Australian Open in Dubai earlier this year. But Gauff still fought for nearly 3 hours in this final. That matters. The second set comeback mattered too, because it showed she's still searching for solutions tactically instead of simply accepting the matchup problem emotionally. That's critical for long-term growth. But there's also a harsh reality Gauff must confront now. This rivalry has become psychological, not just tactical. Psychological. When you lose 3 times in one season to the same opponent, pressure starts building before matches even begin. Every slow start feels heavier. Every missed opportunity feels bigger. Every momentum swing starts carrying emotional baggage from previous losses. That's where Gauff is now against Svitolina. And honestly, you could feel it during key moments of the final, especially when Gauff failed to capitalize on leads earlier in sets. There was tension in her game, hesitation, frustration. Svitolina sensed it immediately. Veteran champions always do. That's why her comments before the final suddenly feel so important now. Remember, Svitolina openly admitted she planned to rewatch previous matches against Gauff carefully to study tactics. Clearly it worked, because she entered Rome with another brilliant game plan. Attack the forehand, extend rallies, absorb pace, stay emotionally calm, force Gauff to overhit eventually. Simple, disciplined, effective. And honestly, until Gauff proves otherwise, this strategy may continue haunting her. Now the biggest question becomes what this means for Roland Garros, because the timing changes everything. Winning Rome usually creates enormous momentum heading into Paris. But winning Rome while defeating Rybakina, Swiatek, and Gauff, that sends a terrifying message to the entire women's draw, especially because Svitolina suddenly looks physically incredible too. Remember, these were not easy matches. Long rallies, physical battles, emotional tension. And somehow the 31-year-old looked fresher than almost everyone else late in matches. That's scary. And historically, players who peak emotionally right before Roland Garros become extremely dangerous during the Grand Slam itself. Now imagine how confident Svitolina must feel mentally. She already dominated Gauff twice earlier this year. Then she beats her again in the biggest clay final before Paris. That creates enormous belief, especially because this was their first ever clay meeting. Many fans expected the surface advantage to help Gauff more because of her athleticism and defensive movement. Instead, Svitolina controlled the matchup again. That changes the conversation completely. And honestly, Coco's reaction after the match said everything too. Exhaustion, frustration, disappointment. Because deep down, Gauff probably understands this loss carried bigger consequences than just another missed trophy. A Rome title would have positioned her as one of the clear favorites entering Roland Garros. Instead, the emotional spotlight now shifts heavily towards Svitolina, and deservedly so, because very few players in modern women's tennis can produce this combination of tactical intelligence and emotional toughness under pressure, especially against elite competition repeatedly. That's why this run feels so special. Now here's the fascinating part moving forward. Rivalries like this often define careers temporarily. Not forever, temporarily. Eventually great champions adapt. They solve problems. They evolve tactically and emotionally. The question is whether Gauff can do that fast enough before this matchup becomes even more mentally damaging. Because if they meet again in Paris soon, the pressure on Coco will become enormous. And Svitolina will know it. That's the dangerous part. Right now, the Ukrainian walks into this rivalry completely free emotionally, while Gauff carries all the pressure to finally stop the losing streak. That imbalance matters in tennis, especially during Grand Slams. Still, counting out Gauff long-term would be incredibly foolish. She's too talented, too athletic, and too mentally strong overall for this rivalry to stay permanently one-sided forever. But in this moment, this belongs entirely to Elina Svitolina. Rome belongs to Elina Svitolina. And honestly, the rest of women's tennis should probably be very nervous right now, because defeating the number 2, 3, and 4 players in the world before Roland Garros is not normal. That's championship-level momentum. So now the question shifts to all of you. After winning Rome and beating Coco Gauff for the 3rd time this season, has Elina Svitolina officially become the favorite for Roland Garros 2026? Or will Gauff use this painful loss as motivation to finally flip the rivalry in Paris? Because after what we just witnessed in Rome, one thing feels undeniable. Women's tennis just found its most fascinating psychological rivalry. Tennis IQ is where we break down the rivalries, pressure, and emotional battles shaping modern tennis, and trust me, this Gauff Svitolina story feels like it's only getting started.